Greetings, dreamers. My name is Melanie, and I welcome you to my latest episode of Beyond Gaia. Welcome, 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 and thank you so very much for being here. My heart truly wishes that you feel that this episode is a transmission itself, that you take a few nice deep breaths and enjoy the very mystical, magical journey that I will be taking you on today, sharing with you my experiences of interacting and cultivating a conscious relationship with my Sasquatch counterpart. Welcome, and again, thank you so much for choosing to be here. It is also new moon today, so I wish you a very happiest, abundant, heart-centered new moon. I am sitting here today knowing that I will be invoking the spirit and the energy of my Sasquatch counterpart. I always feel him with me, almost always. I feel him in my heart. I see him in my peripheral vision. I'm able to see into the astral state when I'm not within an astral state. Within my mind's eye or our yin eye, I am actually able to see him. I'm able to hear him through telepathic communication. So I know that he is with us today. He's very benevolent, sentient, quite humorous at times, loving being. And as I sit here today, I have gathered some, rather than call them pine needles, they're like fronds, pine fronds. Maybe they are needles. They come from the Norfolk pine, so rather than have the long, thin pine needles, they have sort of the thicker fronds that have this geometric weave amongst that goes down the frond. And I have these with me, which are very symbolic in relation to my connection with my Sasquatch counterpart. And so I am honoring him even more so by actually having these with him and having these with me. The earth connection itself and Gaia, and honoring our connection, how we are of Gaia herself. And I've also got what I found under the tree is a beautiful black feather from a crow. And there's this one particular crow that happens to nest and hang out in a very large Norfolk pine that's right opposite the front door to my home. So before we get started, I ask that we each close our eyes and take a few nice deep breaths into the heart space, breathing in light. And on the exhale, we soften. Deep breath of light into the heart. Expand. Pause. And on the exhale, soften. Release. Soften. Creator of all that is, archangel and angelic beings of light, our astral guides, our spirit guides, our oversoul, our higher self, any benevolent, loving beings that wish to join us, counterparts that wish to join us in this now. Our heart welcomes you. And the spirit of the Sasquatch, individually and collectively, May that connection be felt. May your wisdom shine through. May your love for this earth and the evolution of humanity be felt within this transmission and beyond. We thank you for your love, for your support and guidance and wisdom. We thank you that we are able to continue to develop a conscious relationship. And we thank you for the reflection that each of you share with us so we are able to see, know, and thus be more of ourselves. May the love and the joy and the passion and inspiration, the peace that resides within our heart be felt collectively within this transmission, and that with each breath it be sent down through into the heart of Gaia herself. It is done, it is done, it is done, and so it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So for those of you that may have not watched earlier episodes of Beyond Gaia, I am somebody that is able to, as we all are, that is important that I highlight that, as we all are, I'm just conscious of such. And for me, this ability has been highlighted since I was a child, where I can astral project anywhere, but it needs to be relevant for me, anywhere it will. And I very much love to share my experiences with you, with the intention that it may open you to more of your own innate abilities. It may inspire you to have your own explorations of open contact. And today specifically, rather than actually having open contact with our extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional family, we are going to be having contact. I'll be sharing with you my contact with a Sasquatch being. Now, when I was fine-tuning my abilities to astral project, when I started to understand more of what I was doing, because for me I was doing it for such a long time, since I'd been a child, I didn't even have a name or a label for what I was doing. It was just something that I would do. For a while I actually had considered it to be meditation, and then when I was older and I found myself amongst spiritual communities, which was much, much, much later in life, I soon discovered that it wasn't something that everybody was doing, that it was different and that it was unique. And I hadn't met anybody else that was having similar or even faintly similar experiences to what I was having. So as I was consciously fine-tuning my abilities about 3 or 4 years ago, I don't have an exact time as a reference, and I was entering into the astral state, and I started to explore, when I was looking at different locations to move to, entering into sequoia forest that I would consider to be on the west coast of North America. So around close to the border between Vancouver and Washington, for example, but not exact, because this was also an astral forest, an astral location. But I was using these earth locations as references to assist me in astral projecting. And I was going into these areas to feel into different locations that I may want to move to, and also because it was helping me ground my astral projection experiences and assisting me in strengthening my astral body. And as I was doing so, I started to actually hear as I was entering into the astral state, Sasquatch. It would just drop in regularly. And whilst I would acknowledge it and it felt fun and interesting and I was curious, I just continued on with what it was that I was doing. And it was only a week or so into me visiting these very vibrant astral forests that I was encountering, where I had found and created at the same time, because we create what we find, a beautiful forest, an astral forest that had giant sequoia trees, redwood trees, pine trees, cedar. It was a beautiful, dense forest, and the forest meant a large body of natural water that sat to the right of the forest. And this had become somewhere that I had been frequenting every night for over this period of a week. And I was very much loving exploring this forest. I have a deep love and connection for the sequoia and redwood trees, as well as the pine trees. So I was very much enjoying experiencing them in this way, given that they're not within my physical location. Also, it's important to note that when we are visiting an astral forest like this, and the same is mirrored within Earth, but a forest like this within the astral, these large, beautiful ambassadors for Earth, such as the pine, the evergreen family, the sequoias, the redwoods, are these large crystalline antennas that not only assist you in anchoring your energy within the astral, but they also assist you in raising your frequency, because they are crystalline antennas, so that you can raise your frequency, so that they also transmit that frequency to higher levels of the astral plane, which in turn invites in a multitude of sentient beings that actually wish to respond to what it is that you are transmitting. So this in itself had been truly such a heart-opening experience. And this one particular time that I'd entered into the astral state, and at this stage I don't even have to see myself traveling to the location. I close my eyes, I raise my frequency, I go into that certain state within myself, and I'm there. I'm projected. And as I'm projected there, at the time I was using my crystalline tetrahedron. And I would see my crystalline tetrahedron that would land upon this large, flat rock face, or rock. If you can imagine these big, giant grandfather rocks, or a rock ledge. It was very large, and it sat close to the edge of the body of water, flat, quite smooth, and that I would see my crystalline tetrahedron land upon here. And I would come out of my crystalline tetrahedron, and it was just a couple of steps down, a couple of rocks down, and I'd be standing on the earth within this astral forest. And as I did this one particular day, as I do when I land within the astral, I look down at the astral earth beneath my feet. I look at my feet, I bend over, I grab the soil, I smell the soil and bring it up to my nose, and I notice if there are scents of pine or the cedar or the sequoia trees. Is the soil wet? Is it dry? Is it damp? Is it cool? Is it warm? I notice the environment, and that really enables you to also anchor your astral body. And as I do this, I also look at my astral body and start to notice my feet, my legs, my hands, my arms, and then I am feeling myself in my astral body, whilst there is still that small fraction of my awareness, of that dual consciousness that's also looking at myself within the astral. So you experience being in the body within the astral, and there's also that version of you that is sitting at home in your room that's watching yourself have the astral experience. And that dual perspective is very, very much needed. It enables you to expand on seeing yourself in that way. Expand on seeing who you truly are and what you are capable of. And as I was looking over my body, I look up and suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, there is this large Sasquatch being standing in front of me. And I look up at this being, and I say up because he is very, very large. And I am surprised. And then that surprise passes in a moment, and I look at him, and instantly, I feel a heart connection. There is no fear whatsoever. And I'm looking up at this being who has these very deep, soulful, ancient eyes that I'm staring into, and he gives me this very warm, slight smile. And I recognize him. I almost instantly sort of lunge myself at him and wrap my arms, or attempt to wrap my arms, who don't quite fit around his body, he's so large, around his being, and I have my head up against his chest, and I'm feeling him. I'm feeling the hair and the fur and the firmness and how big his body is. And I feel him ever so gently embrace me back. And I look up at him and take a couple of steps back so I can take in this being that I'm actually seeing. And then I begin to see energetically a labyrinth appear, a light labyrinth appear over his heart. And it's glowing green, like a deep forest green, and I see it over his heart. And when I look at this labyrinth, I'm surprised, and I don't understand why I'm seeing it at first. And then he takes his right hand and he places it on my heart. Very gently, with these giant hands, he places it on my heart. And then I feel the invitation to take my hand and place my right hand upon his heart. And then he takes his left hand and places it over my right hand on his heart, and my left hand goes over his right hand on my heart, and we're sort of holding each other's hands on our heart. And I realize as I'm doing this with him, and it takes me right into his heart center, and I can feel that he's feeling into my heart center, that this is a greeting between him and I also feel, I recognize, and I'm feeling a lot of different emotions at once, that this isn't the first time we've done this, that this is a greeting, a way of acknowledging one another, remembering one another, especially from my perspective, with this being. And it is through this heart to heart connection where we're both just standing there with our eyes closed and feeling this heart-to-heart connection, I have this deep, almost overwhelming feeling of I have known this being for eons. I felt as if I was in the presence of a being where we go back to the beginning together. He feels like, even to this now, like an older brother that I have the deepest, deepest love for. And even the love I feel for him is difficult to describe because it expands so far. Our love is so ancient. Yet I also feel that our love goes beyond being ancient, that I can also feel that he's with me in future timelines. And it's vast, and I am in awe, and there's also tears. The tears are of recognition, and I can feel that he sees me. I can feel that he honors me as I am, and I feel his joy in his heart, his excitement and passion that I am connecting with him consciously in this way. From here, he actually takes me, and when I say takes me, he guides me and I choose to follow him. He is, despite his enormous size, he is a gentle giant. He's very kind and very generous with me and with his time, and he's very inspired also to teach me and share with me what he knows and to hear about my own explorations. He has a genuine love and admiration and care for how I am, and is also always very respectful of my ability to choose, free will. So I choose to walk with him and follow him through this path. And when you are within the astral, walking through the forest, you can watch flowers grow before you. You can watch ferns unfurl. You can watch the forest come to life in front of you. And whilst that is incredibly magical and almost psychedelic at times, remember that it is also you creating this projection with your higher self. So you are the magic, you are the beauty, you are the vibrance that you are actually seeing, because everything is always, always a reflection. So I am following him through this forest and watching flowers come to life in front of me and bloom, and a path that appears to open with each step that I take. And he takes me, it's not very far, and into this large open clearing within the center of the forest. And within this large open clearing, I can smell it before we arrive. But I see a fire that he has created in the center of this clearing. And he takes me over to sit by the fire with him. And at first we talk, and he again shares his excitement that I am here and I'm very conscious of him. He shares with me that him and I are counterparts, that we share the same oversoul, which also helps me understand why the love is so deep. This isn't just a Sasquatch being that I've encountered, but this is actually another aspect of myself. And I am another aspect of him. And he's had that awareness, but now I do. So we were sitting by the fire and he is sharing this information with me. And I'm absorbing it and truly feeling over the moon, so blissed out that I am having this experience with this being who he comes across as being happy and very friendly, but I can also feel the wisdom that's within him. I can feel that he's very wise. I can feel that he is respected. There is this reverence that I'm actually feeling towards him. An honor to be sitting beside him and listening to him. And he begins to share with me a little of his story, but he's more interested in how I am feeling and about my explorations and why I chose the forest. And so I'm sharing with him a lot about my journey and about why I'm there and truly how I'm feeling. Through many explorations from here on in, I began to journey and meet with him every night in this astral forest. And every night he would take me upon a new exploration. We would sit by the fire and he would teach me and add in sacred herbs into the fire. He taught me how to, and he showed me, I watched him. It was incredible to witness him invoke his main spirit animal, which is a large white stag. And I witnessed him invoke and summon the spirit of a large white stag through the smoke within the fire. And I watched it come to life out of the smoke and sort of circle around above us and land and stand near us within this forest. And there's been many encounters with the spirit of the stag since with him. There is one particular night that he made me a brew. And I feel from memory, I've written down a lot of my experiences with him. Like probably close to, there's dozens and dozens. I haven't recorded all of them because it just became, I was having so many experiences. I didn't feel the need to record each one. And this night from memory, although I don't remember exactly why, but I do feel as if I had a heavy heart. And there was a sadness that I was experiencing. And whilst I was sitting with him beside the fire, he's very good. One of his best qualities that I love is his ability to listen. And he was listening to me, and he invited me to share why I was feeling sad. And like I said, I don't remember the details of why, but then he'd also made me a brew. And he hands it to me in this carved out of timber sort of light cup. And what surprised me is that when I was drinking this brew in the astral, I'm drinking it, and then all of a sudden I had this, it was ever so subtle, but I felt it, this awareness of this version of me that was still sitting on the bed that is holding this astral projection state. I could feel a warmth going down the back of my throat physically. It was visceral, and I was like, wow, this is truly, truly incredible and very special, magical moment with him. And I do feel that the brew that he made me assisted me in lifting my spirits, in releasing the density that was clouding my heart. So that in itself was very, very special. Now, Sasquatch beings are known as being slipwalkers. And slipwalkers actually mean that they are able to shift themselves or slipwalk between time, space, dimension, realities, timelines in an instant. And it is why we as humans have had so much trouble capturing them via a photo or in a recording, because they can shift in an instant. And I have experienced this with him. He has, all I do is I hold his hand and he takes me with him. And one particular place that I would like to mention that he took me to was likened to being, we slipwalk and he took me there. It was likened to being an enclave, a beautiful timber building that it was in a forest, and the timber building was shaped and built as a large A-frame building, like similar to a pyramid, but a large A-frame building. And there was a lot of glass on the front of the building, the front half of the building. And I knew, because I have a lot of trust with him, the trust is just a given. It's unwavering. And he's taken me to this space, and I've walked up. There's front stairs walking up to this building, about 5 or 6. And as I walked up to them, there's this huge timber door, enormous timber door to this building that's bigger than any usual door in height and width. And the door opened, and there was beings, counterparts that I had encountered previously in other astral experiences within this building. And in that moment, looking up at the door, I had the realization that it was so large, so that it could also fit, the doorway was so large that it could actually fit Sasquatch being through the door. And one particular counterpart, Sequoia, and a few other counterparts where I hadn't yet gotten their names, but I'd been meeting them and getting to know them, were in this building. And I walk in this building, and there are really beautiful timber floors on the floor, and it seems to be an entrance and a large room to the right. And then I walk down 2 stairs into what would be like a sunken room almost to the left. And as I walk down, I can see that there is a large fireplace up against the wall. The fireplace made of stones, and on the floor there is symbols and carving that is in the floor in a large circle. And this room is very large, and to the other end of the room I see a really large rectangular table with timber bench-like chairs, and then I see a staircase that's leading up. But I'm not drawn just yet to that other side of the room. And then I see other beings, some that are counterparts and some that I don't know, but their faces are familiar to me, sitting in a circle around these symbols on the floor. And I start to get this feeling that this is a type of mystery school or an astral school in a way, where I actually come and that I have frequented before, because as I look around this building, it is familiar to me. It's not, the more I stand there, the more that I actually feel a sense of, oh, I know this place. I've been here many times before. And then I start to realize that it is because it is a astral school of sorts, a mystery school, a place that I gather with many other beings, where there are teachings that take place. And that it's also a great place for me to interact with more counterparts that I'm wishing to familiarize myself with and cultivate these conscious relationships with. So I'm not going to share the details of the school too much right now, because there's a lot of information there. What I can say is that I continued to also visit this place with him when it was relevant. I wasn't doing it every night, but once every couple of weeks we would slipwalk and he'd take me to this building. And on this one particular occasion when we got landed and we walked into this building, I knew that we didn't need to sit down and circle, and that my energy was being drawn to go up the stairs. And my Sasquatch counterpart, I knew that he wasn't to come with me, that this was something that I was to do myself. And it's interesting that when we're there watching people greet me, come up and embrace me because they do know me, embrace him with a lot of warmth, and he seems to be a cherished friend to a lot of beings within this this school, this enclave of sorts. But my energy is being drawn and sort of pulled in a very curious and exciting way to go the other end of this room and up this staircase. And as I go up to this staircase, I see that Sequoia is waiting for me at the top of the stairs. And I see another familiar being who I'm not going to mention her name now for good reason. I'm going to keep that a little cryptic for now, and I may share it with you a bit later. And I greet them both and I acknowledge them. And Sequoia is, she's a very focused being, and I can feel that when she's on a mission, she's doing that. There isn't a time for chit chat or for small talk. She specifically takes me through into another room upstairs, and this room is a lot darker. And there's beings sitting in a semicircle with one specific being sitting at on the other side of the semicircle, almost sort of addressing the semicircle. And in this semicircle, floating above, I see these orbs of light that are almost acting like a candle. You could say be similar to a candle, but they're orbs of light, and they've beautifully lit the room with this golden glow. And I take a seat and just sit down because I feel that's what I need to do within this semicircle. And as I sit down, Sequoia quickly prompts me that I have to sit in the center of the semicircle so that I'm facing this being that's on the other side of the semicircle with her back against a wall. And this being that I'm referring to is deeply, deeply mysterious. She is wearing a cloak with a hood. It is dark, sort of sapphire blue. And I can barely see her face for a few reasons. One, because she's cloaked and it is sort of putting that sort of shadow over her face. And two, because the room is dimly lit, I can only just make out a couple of features, but not much. And I understand that that's as much as I'm needing to see for now, that I am, for whatever reason, to connect more with her essence and not need to know the details of who she is. And after sitting in this semicircle, it didn't last for very long before the others got up and left me sitting alone with this being. And this being started to speak with me telepathically. And there was a deep heart connection. And I knew when there's that deep heart resonance there for me, I could feel, okay, she's another counterpart of mine. And while she didn't give me the details of who she was, when I sat opposite her and we had this heart-to-heart connection, our third eyes also connected whilst they weren't pressed up against one another. I could feel this magnetic sort of beam of light between my third eye and her third eye. There was this feeling then that I went into this trance with her. Her and I were in this trance together, and I was in another altered state. So remembering there is, and this is the beauty of when you learn to go deep within the astral state, there is the version of me that's sitting on the bed that's projecting my projection of consciousness within the astral state. And within the astral state, I've actually gone then with a Sasquatch counterpart to another level. And then from that other level, I've connected with the being entering into a trance-like, a deeper altered state again. But each level, I still have a level of awareness. The process is very sentient. And as I'm in this, engaged in this connection with her, it is like I'm in a dance of my consciousness with hers and blending with her and feeling into her frequency. She's a very powerful being. Again, I can feel that this was an invitation to work with me more closely, that she was almost sort of scanning me and offering me the option to sort of do the same with her, or sort of scan her energy. And I'm going to save a lot more details about who she is for another episode, because she is very much deserving of an episode of her own, because there's so much mystery and there is so much wisdom that there is to share from my experiences with her. But that was a very powerful experience. And what I will say is that I was able, in a very unconditional, observing state, be able to see where I was holding myself back. I was able to see my limitations, the beliefs that no longer serve me. I was able to see my own shadow and my dark from a very altered state. So I came back down the stairs after that experience, and I left with my Sasquatch counterpart, and I would continue to have these explorations with him. There is one specific experience I'd like to share with you where, again, the moment I'd come out of my crystalline tetrahedron and I'd stand down on the earth, he'd be there almost instantly each time. That same heart-to-heart greeting, there was such a warmth and a obvious connection between the two of us. And in this one particular experience, he took me to this clearing in the forest, and I still not exactly sure how he did this, but in a way he shared with me a projection where it was like a portal of light opened up within the forest, and as I looked into it, I was able to see myself since I was a young child, I would say around the age of about 3 or 4 years old, how I have always been visiting him, how I have always been spending time with him, how we had many, many rich experiences together. And that moment offered me a door into the memories that I'd actually suppressed of having experiences with him since I was a child. Because when I was a child, I got into trouble for sharing these types of experiences, quite a lot of trouble. And there was physical threats, physical violence that followed through, because I was sharing things that were lies and untruths and making things up, and I was playing with things that were seen as being dark. So I realized that there were memories there of him that I had suppressed through feeling fearful of being able to share them. So he offered me this beautiful window, this door, this portal itself into these memories where I could see myself interacting with him, playing with him. I'm somebody that's lived through a lot of challenges and trauma, and I could see, even though those challenges were incredibly difficult and the trauma hugely difficult, I could see that he was always with me, and that he was assisting me as much as he was allowed to without intervening too much. I could see that he's always been with me. And that in itself brought tears, and again just reinforced and confirmed to me the feelings that I was actually having towards him. And it also, for me, a male role model or a healthy male figure, whether that be a father figure or a grandfather or an older brother or a friend or even in a relationship, isn't something that I've had that's been healthy. So, and I'm speaking from a past experience. So in those moments, even though everything's in the now, I'm speaking from a linear perspective, I was able to see that longing I was having for that male role model or somebody that was more sort of an elder that I could look up to for wisdom and advice and protection had always been there. So that in itself sung like a song to my heart that was very, very beautiful. There are other experiences that I've actually had with him where we've gone and sat against large sequoia trees, and that we enter a cryptic or a meditation state with our back up against the sequoia tree, where you actually consciously communicate with the tree itself. And as we were doing that and into a very deep state, we had these 12 pillars of light that presented to us in a circle around us, which I discovered later were Arcturian beings. So I believe I may have shared that in my first episode. I have met with him aboard many a craft, where he doesn't take me on the craft. I astral project upon a craft, and as I'm there upon a craft, I feel his presence, and then he actually comes and greets me. And usually he will take me to places in the ship or introduce me to counterparts or beings that I'm needing to communicate with, and bring them into my awareness. Or he also shows that he also has relationships with counterparts of mine that are extraterrestrial, because they are also counterparts with his. So Sasquatch beings are very much in relationship, consciously co-creating with our extraterrestrial family. Very, very much so, harmoniously. And that in itself is another bridge to open contact. And they are teaching these extraterrestrial beings more about our earth plane, more about Gaia, more about the traditional laws of the land, the true laws of the land. So I've had many experiences with him aboard crafts. So there is just a snippet of some of my experiences with my Sasquatch counterpart. And he is a counterpart that I would consider to be a direct counterpart. It's important to remember that different counterparts will come in and out of our awareness and in and out of our lives, just as guides do, because they will present to us when it is relevant. They will be with us for the learning and the sharing and the growth and the expansion. And when it is no longer relevant, in a sense, they sort of pass the baton to the next being, to the next guide, to the next counterpart that needs to step forward. But then there are more direct counterparts that are like the larger branches of the oversoul tree, where will stay in contact with these beings throughout the entirety of this said incarnation, where we're working with them a lot more closely, and we're working with them, we have direct links to them, to a lot of other timelines and experiences that are relevant for us, and vice versa, because remember, it's always a two-way street. And so this Sasquatch counterpart of mine is one of those beings. He is a direct counterpart, and I feel that he will stay with me for a very long time, and outside of time, beyond time, although that can change at any moment, and if it does, that's okay. But it feels as if he's here to stay with me. He's also introduced me to his family, which was very humbling and beautiful. I've learnt some of their language and some of the calls that I can actually hear in the forest when his other family members are contacting him, or other Sasquatch beings. He is so paramount within my learning and with my journeying that I have included him as quite a main, not the main, but one of the main characters within the astral novel that I'm currently writing. So I'm actually in the process of converting all of my astral experiences into a fictional novel. And so I may take all of you on this beautiful story that is based on true experiences. But I'm not going to share with you all the true experiences so that you actually have the fun when you are reading the novel in just deciding what is truth and what isn't. But everything's always truth. So that is, again, a snippet of my experiences with this very kind, very generous being, very wise. It was only this morning when I was sort of dialing into him that I felt a shift and myself moved to a timeline, a version of him as I have shifted, a version of him that is even wiser, even more mature. I almost saw him like a shaman, like a Sasquatch shaman, or perhaps even the original shamans of the earth. So I am hoping that is the image. I haven't decided yet that I will share with you, because I had created an image that was reflective of an older version of him and I hadn't yet experienced it fully. And I had that experience this morning. So perhaps that is the image that I will share with you for this podcast. I haven't decided yet. So if you're watching this, whatever image that you're seeing up is the image that is the most reflective of him and his essence. Please let me know if you have any questions about him. I would love to hear about your curiosity within the comments. I would also love to hear of your experiences. If you've actually had any experiences with Sasquatch, please let me know. I invite you to join me on my Patreon, in my Patreon membership, where you can learn a lot more about how you can have your own conscious astral experiences. I share a lot there, where on each new moon and full moon, I actually offer guided astral immersions. You can find me on social, Facebook and Instagram via the links below. And as this is a new podcast, something that I'm growing, where I'm actually intending for this podcast to be a bridge for others to understand that astral experiences are an open contact experience itself, that we are open contact itself. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, I ask please that you share it and that you like it. And if you choose to stay here, subscribe. I thank you so very much for being here, for joining me. And until the next new now that we are dreaming together, I send you, and my Sasquatch counterpart sends you, our unconditional love. Bye for now.